believe.
And so to your point, Jared, we have a window now where there's just a ton of opportunity for people that didn't buy, that didn't sell, first-time home buyers, all of that. And I'm not so sure how long that window is going to be open.
Yeah. Today we're really blessed to have Chase Hodgson with Summit Funding here with us today to talk to us
Thank you.
on the lending side. So we're super excited to chat with you. Just a little bit of background, and then you can add some detail to it. But sure. Native?
Yeah, definitely.
One of the few these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah. Besides the newborns, right? They're young. They're just not up and speaking yet.
Right.
Well, cool thing is, all of a sudden, we come to find out we've got some people that we basically both grew up around.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Some of that small town still left in our area.
So two natives in the room. Long-term transplant, not quite there. Yeah. People ask me if I claim to be a native yet, because I've been here, since 94, so whatever, almost 30 years later. And I'm like, no, I don't want to, I'm getting close, but I'll never be that true native. But so native family, long-time flooring business here in the Valley, successful flooring business?
Yeah, but I'm the son of, I'd like to say it this way, I'm the son of two entrepreneurs, one by choice and one by marriage. Mm-hmm. And, after traveling around, they settled here. They opened the original floor covering store in Grand Junction, Colorado. And then they moved here, and that's, how I got my start here. And I grew up watching them do business, grow up around real estate and contractors and subcontractors and that lifestyle,
Okay. So real estate kind of all growing up, and you ended up in appraisal business.
Yeah, absolutely. So once, I actually, left this beautiful state for all of 2 years, but I did my college at Boise State, degree in economics, studied some finance, and I was always going to follow my father's footsteps. And I 3 years into the business, I'm like, man, I don't really like this at all. And so,
glad you figured it out sooner than later.
Yeah, and so I just started looking, and I had a friend, and he's like, yeah, you got to become a real estate appraiser. I'm like, yeah, why not? I have no idea what that is, but I'll go ahead and start doing that. Yeah,
than what I'm doing.
And so I did that for about a decade, and loved it. Really loved that business. And then, of course, 08 happened, right? And I had just opened up my own office. I'd branched off from the folks that had taught me, and I'd opened up my own office, and then 08 happened, and I probably could have muddled through that, right, taken a second job, but once they instituted the appraisal management companies and put that third party in, I realized that, man, I like people, I like marketing, I like talking to people, and with that new process, that wasn't allowed, so... Right. It's time to move on.
Do something different, and you ended up in mortgage lending.
Yeah, the 2 or 3 down the road, right? It was 08. Yeah. I had a young wife, brand new kid, and I took a job selling janitorial services.
Do what you got to do.
Yeah, for about $1,200 a month plus commission, and I was managing that company after about a year and a half. Helped them grow 2-3 times. In a 5-year period, kind of reinvigorated my sales, the sales side of me, and then I moved to, kind of backwards a little bit into some commercial floor covering sales. And in that line of work, I kept coming across people that had a hard time in that commercial world getting financing. They didn't fit that cookie cutter box that the banks were allowing. Oh, yeah. And so I knew some people here, knew some people there, and used my network to kind of solve some problems. And then longtime friend, 30 years, Nate Pugmire, he's the branch manager over at Summit Funding where I'm at now. He was like, man, it's about time you make that move and come jump into permanent financing. And so that's how I ended up at Summit.
A few years later, and so life is good.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, Summit wasn't my first stop. I was at another place for about a year. And then, moved over to Summit, and it's such an amazing place. The ownership, and in what's going on, one of the amazing things is I work for a company that has, $220 million in liquid, reserves, and they have $150 million in real estate assets, and we're not going anywhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm. They made it through 08.
Yeah.
And so we're one of the handful of direct to agency lenders. Direct correspondent with Idaho Housing. We broker, we do everything. I'm a mortgage lender technically, but we do a little bit of everything. And our it just gives me a breadth of what problems that I can solve for people.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Chase, there's a couple of things that I really admire and respect, and I feel blessed to know you and work with you on. And that's one is, and you fit the mold of what we like. We talked in one of our last podcasts about the team that you have and the experience, the knowledge, the background that they bring to the table. And Chase, I reach out to you, quite often to talk about appraisal stuff, make sure my folks, we're considering everything, whether they're buying or selling, and pick your brain on the appraisal side, because you're not, we don't talk much with appraisers.
Right.
It's just, not something we do these days. So, I really appreciate that knowledge and going in, and that's very valuable to our clients at the end of the day.
Good.
And the other is, and we talked about this in finding a good agent. I think it was the last podcast or the one before that, but is how do we identify a good agent? And our number one is, where's the agent's heart? Do they have a heart of serving others? What is the mission here? Is it truly about the end result in the process for the buyer or the seller, which is, in my opinion, a dying art in our industry? It's becoming more and more transactional than relational, and it drives me nuts. Like, it just, they're trying to make numbers and they're trying to improve their numbers, and I think the industry as a whole is losing a large focus on serving people for what they need to accomplish. Anyway, back to what I was going to, compliment you on, is you've always had that servant's heart, doing the right thing, making sure that they're well taken care of. So I want our audience to know that, and I just want to appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Jared. I mean, obviously, I see that in you as well, and I think that's why we've worked together for, so well for this long. But I can't credit that to myself. I learned from probably the best salesperson I still know today, and that's my mother. She was all customer service. She ran the front of the house. Dad ran the back of the house, the contractors and stuff like that. The contractors were family to them. And the first and foremost was making sure that they were taken care of and that their families were taken care of. And so that's the environment that I grew up in. And, it's extended to the builders that they worked with, the developers that they worked with, and they just built those deep relationships. And I'm drawn more and more to that as we go, as time passes, because you see less and less of it.
Yeah, you got to be that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost didn't get into, what they call the sales world, because I was so put off by salespeople. I just kind of hated that. It's about me. Knock down objections, push them through the sales process mentality. Like, literally, salespeople made me cringe.
Yes.
And I was more on the inside, and then inside technical support, and then graduated to inside sales. And a gentleman that turned out to be my mentor later said, why aren't you on the sales side of things? You're an extrovert. You really want to help people. You really want to solve problems. Why aren't you there? And I said, I don't want to be associated to salespeople. And to this day, I wish I could remember verbatim, but man, it was deep and profound. He said, the good salespeople, the salesperson title is a misnomer. They're not there to sell anybody anything. They're there to help people buy.
Yep.
And what you need to understand is everybody buys differently. The good salespeople, or the people that help buy, understand very quickly what it is that the person is looking for and the questions they have to make a good educated decision. If you have that mindset and then get into sales, and again, maybe someday I'll put a different title on it, but that's what the world chose to put on, is we're salespeople. Buyer's person doesn't. I mean, that doesn't ring. But anyway, my point is, we're all kind of that mindset, and I just wanted the audience to know that our team is also, of that mindset.
Yeah.
Very similar.
I think the thing, because I was similar to you, people think automatically because you love meeting people and love getting to know them, right? And that's been something I've just been wired that way forever, that you would automatically want to jump into sales. And I was like, I don't really want to talk people into stuff or push stuff on them they're not interested in. But really, what I've translated into is that I love coaching. And I've coached a lot of different things. And I've been that way forever, but it's kind of like coaching. You're helping them achieve goals, whether it's, needs or wants. You're helping them solve problems. You're helping them, get to that finish line, per se, of where they want to be. And so it's really, I always kind of look at it now as like, it's the coaching. I get to be like, well, here's what we know. Here's the information. Let's get all the information so you have it. And now let's sort through it. And that's the thing that I've translated into, because if you think about sales, it's always like, but really it's helping people achieve those goals, and how you can, because as we know, we all wear a lot of hats in what we do. It's not just
a lot of hats.
The deal. It's like you sometimes are helping them kind of counsel through the process of parts that you become very emotional or stressful, and you're helping them get through that, and so you wear all these different hats in the process.
Yeah. I for the longest time had real estate consultant on my business cards, and I got asked quite often, what does that mean? It's not realtor. It's not any kind of normal anticipated title on a business card. I won't bore you with the details of why it's changed a little bit, but that's more of what I felt like I'm a consultant, a trusted advisor. So anyway, I just wanted the audience to know, what our approach is to helping you with your process. And, everybody we're going to bring in to talk with, all the expert advice and everything is going to come from that perspective.
I love that. I love that. And DR, like with what you touched on with the coaching, like for me, that's all of it, right? I've been coached my entire life. And I coach. I get to coach my kids' teams. I get to, I've become a financial coach in my job now, right?
Nice.
So, like literally the first step in building real wealth for anyone is owning real estate. It's a forced savings account. It's a place. It's stop paying someone else's mortgage and pay your own. And so, but to get a lot of people there, like most of our first-time home buyers, our schools fail so miserably. Like they don't even know how to write a check. They don't know how to handle a credit card.
They don't have a checkbook.
No, none of that stuff, right? And so you become that financial counselor, and it's like, hey, like these are the steps that we need to take to get you prepared.
Yeah.
And it's probably the most rewarding part of my job. And in fact, that the last 3 years, I lost the passion for what I do because, it was all about who has the most cash, and that's who gets to buy the house. And so our first-time home buyers are priced out of the market, and they can't compete. And I lost something in my soul, really, because I couldn't be that servant for them. And so I'm excited about where we're headed right now. And I gotta do some of that stuff here in the last couple months, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, it did. It got nuts, as we all know, but it did. It took some of that joy of the process, But the good thing is we're getting back to more of a normal market. We're getting back to some normal transactions in the process. But yeah. So the thing that I really realized is in your world how much even myself can lean on that and in guidance and, hey, this is what's going on. Because the wisdom you all bring and what you can and show and how you can look at it in a different way. Because sometimes when you look at something, it's just like walking through a house. You look at it and pretty soon you don't see stuff. And, you're able to just come out with fresh set of eyes and also give people ease, comfort.
Yeah.
Because, we're talking dollars and cents.
Yeah. Well, let's spend a little time talking about why now is a good time to buy, because we get that question a lot. And I think the natural kind of knee-jerk thought is that this is a horrible time to buy. And maybe for some, but there are a lot of people that now is now a really good time. We've had very little, if any, ability to ask for anything from sellers. Sellers have been dominated and had all the leverage in the market for the longest time, and it's been heartbreaking to see, buyers, like you said, first-time home buyers, when they get into the market, some of the things we've got to do as agents is ask for help from the seller, because they haven't spent, the time that it takes to put down the money that they need to put that nest egg aside to buy a home. And a lot of people don't know we can, in a normal-ish market, go ask for that from our sellers. So I think that's a biggie. So just the ability to do that. Just so you know, I feel very strongly about it. I helped my daughter and her husband just close on one, and you, the both of us,
right,
just 2 weeks ago. So I'm not just talking here.
Yeah,
we're acting, and I've told them you have the ability now to get into home ownership. They're in their young 20s, mid 20s, and I'm excited that they're building that foundation, kind of pun intended, for wealth. What is it? 80% of the American population's wealth comes from real estate. Is that the number?
Yeah. It's something around that. I wouldn't know exactly, but yeah, it's funny that you bring up your daughter and your son-in-law, but that helps a little. That was like 2 or 3 of those in a month for me. you know, where we got to help some people get into.
You got a lot of emotional currency.
Oh my gosh, man. It was amazing because it had been lacking in what I do. It had gotten so transactional, to your point. But yeah, so when you're talking about building wealth, and to digress a little bit and go back, you know, when is the best, you know, is it a good time to buy? When is the best time to buy? And there's that old adage, not to sound cheesy, but it's the best time to buy real estate was yesterday.
Yeah.
And the next best time is today.
We'll talk
right?
about that a little more, because it's not. It is an adage, but I don't think people understand. Like they get nervous. Why would I do it today if I think the market's trending in a bad direction? Like we could end up where 08, 09 is. But there's a lot to think about here.
Well, and to me, to my point, right? Like I lived through 08. Like it was, like I said earlier, I took a job selling janitorial supplies for $1,200 a month, right? Plus commission, right? So I understand where 08 can go, but the thing is you're never going to start building equity, right? You're never going to start that forced savings account until you close,
right?
And so if it goes down, so they're projecting, I think the number was like it's down like between 15 and 20%. They're projecting another 9 in the first quarter. But what we're seeing is, they're over the year span, they're projecting 3 to 4% appreciation, right? So, the people in 08, the people that kept their houses, there's not one of them that regrets that at this point in time.
They made a lot of money.
Right.
Exactly.
And so, we had a conversation, not too long ago with a couple of people that was, going over, and in fact, I think I put it out on social media. I did this post where I said, buying today at, list price for 6.5 is better than buying, at 3% a year ago for 50,000 over. And I was just like, I all these lenders hit me back and they're like, no, that's not true. The payment's higher, the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but what is your opportunity cost? That's we're short-sighted as Americans. We need to know we have the lowest interest rate and the best price, and I want it all right now. What is your opportunity cost, right? You took $50,000 to $100,000, which we saw all day long, people paying over asking, right, just to get the house. What could you have done with that $50,000 to $100,000?
Yeah.
Who cares about a 6.5% interest rate if you can get a 7%? Like that's the S&P's like 25-year average, right? A 7% return. If you can invest that and get 7% return, like what do you care?
Yeah, that rate you just touched on is a good point, because the average, I think, over historical lending, mortgage lending, is 7%.
Yeah,
we're right about what the national average is. The 2s, the 3s, the 4s, they may not ever happen again. Not ever. I shouldn't say that, but. You know what I mean?
That's unlikely too, right? Like that's an unlikely number.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think the other point is, and we kind of toss it around loosely, is you're making somebody's mortgage payment.
Absolutely.
So why don't you make it?
So I love what I do, and I love getting people in homes, especially first-time home buyers, right? Or that family that just had a kid that gets to move up, or that needs that space, and now they've got the equity in their home that they're able to do that stepping stone process. I love that. There's two truths though. Like one of them is not everybody is meant to own a home. That's just the unfortunate truth of it, right? Right. Owning a home comes with some fiscal and financial responsibility. But the other truth is the people that do own, if they manage that, they begin to grow wealth. That will fall to their children and their offspring and whatnot.
Yeah, and when I say I help my daughter and my son-in-law out, that was the caveat: is you need to understand, you need to be fiscally responsible, or you could lose this.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I'm bullish on the real estate market, especially in our market. Absolutely. Because of the demand supply ratios are way different than they were in 08, and they're healthy enough that as soon as the normalization happens, I think we're going to be back on track. But even at the end of the day, what I told him is, so what if it goes down in value? If you can just do what it takes to keep that house for as long as it takes, to your point, the 08, 09, the only people that lost money is when they sold their house.
Yeah.
If they kept it for 10, 12 years or whatever it was, they made hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, the point is now that if you're not going to sell the house in 3 months, buy. You know what I mean? Like, because realistically, everybody's projecting it to go up, and we don't know how deep the recession is going to be. Right? The Fed has kind of overstepped what most experts said they should do. We could see probably another quarter point hike at the next interval, and they've used some verbiage to where they'd rather see us overshoot and make sure that we stop inflation, no matter, if we're a little deeper recession or whatever. Being a native, DR, you can speak to this, like, aside from '08, every other recession that we've experienced, we've kind of run contrary to the rest of the nation here in Idaho, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so
because our inventory is always low and will be for the foreseeable future.
I just went to an economic summit where they gave statistics, and over the next 10 years, there's like 17,000 homes short just in Ada County. It was another 6,500 in Canyon County. Like, we can't make that up, And in speaking to, I work a lot with builders. They're projecting by early to midsummer, they're going to be out of inventory.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think that's what our audience, especially for people that don't keep track of the real estate market much, but just the natural kind of laws, rules around supply and demand as it relates to real estate. If they understand what that means, that until your supply comes up to a point, it will always be strong in value. If you have too much, like we did in '08, '09, and that's because we had all these homes that went back on the market and built inventory, while simultaneously the demand was dropping off because we didn't have jobs and people were, losing jobs and all these things going on. That's when things get bad. Yeah. But we can't see any near-term, even in my mind, mid-term adjustment in an over supply. It's just not going to happen. And I'm not hearing any backing off of any demand either.
You start to stack statistics, right? Like, so when you talk about basic supply and demand, I just gave the statistic of how far behind we are in homes needed. We all, like, a little bit older generation sitting here, right, chatting. And the baby boomers were the biggest thing that ever hit this country. Well, the millennials outpaced them. Now we've got the next generation coming up.
Prime buying.
Yeah,
age.
They're outpacing the baby boomers by 10 million.
Wow.
10 million homes. So how do you make that up? I mean, you're talking across the nation. Yeah. Like, how do you make that up? It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take decades. And we were behind. So after '08, you had almost a 10-year period where literally builders almost didn't build at all. And so then it starts to pick up. We're behind, right? And then that generation hits that interval where it's time for them to start buying houses, because they're later, right? They didn't initially. Yep. They wanted to live the free life and rent and travel and do all these things. Well, then they realized
they did it. It's like, my wealth comes from, in large part, owning real estate. I got to have a roof over my head. Why am I still paying somebody else's mortgage? I mean, all these questions that we're talking about come into the picture. So anyway, I'm just sharing, in my opinion, yes, we are normalizing. Yes, we are correcting, but I think we're going to be in that position, not of a chaotic market again, but from a very healthy, sustainable, appreciating market. Yeah. So for those that, if you do simple math, just use a 3% average, which is very, very conservatively low, I think.
Yeah, that's like a national average. That's not specifically here to Idaho. We outpace that all the time.
So let's just do 5 to keep it, somewhat rounder, more round numbers. 5% on every $100,000 of the value of your home.
Yeah.
$500,000 home.
It's a pretty good return.
That's $25,000 a year on paying your mortgage
and having a place to live.
And having a place to live. By the way, talk to your tax accountant, but what are you writing off?
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, we could go on, but I think everybody in this room would agree that at some point the market's going to be done correcting. I think it's months. I don't, maybe a month or two, in my opinion. Have any thoughts on?
Well, I was just going to say, going back, like, whether you're paying rent or mortgage, you're putting money in somebody's bank account. Some people say, well, that's a mortgage. You're paying off the mortgage. Yeah, but you're literally putting money in your bank account.
Yep.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Forced savings, yeah.
Yep. And then, of course, like the '08 deal, now, of course, we don't have people, like you said, who maybe shouldn't. That was that.
Yes.
That was a bunch of people that shouldn't.
That real estate caused that.
Correct.
100%.
Correct. But now we've got that to where it's like, hey, you got to be in a good place. So we won't deal with that. But you're going to be putting money in somebody's account.
Right.
Put it back in yours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a good point. We should talk more about that. I don't remember what the percentage of people that were buying, but I think it was over. It was almost in the high 60s, 70s. People that could buy were buying. And somebody said something to me after the crash. They're like, you know what? How we thought that 1 out of 3 out of every 4 people were fiscally responsible enough to buy a house. You know, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. You know, I don't, you know, different circles you run in, but you know, back in the day, I couldn't tell you 3 or 4 of my friends could be fiscally responsible. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of. But anyway, what I was leading up to is now, you know, when I'm talking to clients, I'm like, if you're talking to a lender and you're getting approved, you're qualified.
Yeah,
you're doing the right things.
It's skin in the game. We're back to skin in the game,
Yeah.
right? Like in 08, it was like, yeah, if you had a pulse, you could get a mortgage.
Everybody
like,
breathe in the mirror.
Yeah, I remember like one day after the crash, I'm sitting watching the news, and they're in California, they're interviewing this lady that is a housekeeper, right? And she's angry because she has to go through bankruptcy because she has $1 million investment property. You know, somebody did that loan. Some agent sold it to them. You know what I mean? Our government created the programs that allowed it.
Right.
But there's no like personal responsibility. Well, I didn't, you know, I can't make that payment. Like none whatsoever.
When I was looking in 2004, I got into real estate because I was buying a home, and I am not making this up. I was out and about. We were looking at kind of homes, and I said, you know, I was talking to a lender, and I said, you know, I'd like to find out how much I'd qualify for. And she says, literally, what do you want to qualify for?
Yeah.
To my face. Anyway, think of that.
Oh, yeah.
Think of that. Yeah, so the fogging a mirror and put a number on it, that was happening. My point is, that's not happening anymore.
Right. No.
Like we've tightened up.
I mean, underwriting.
Speak to that.
Yeah, underwriting is much more stringent. You have to have skin in the game. You know, down payment.
Documentation.
Documentation. You have to, you know, we're looking at pay stubs and W-2s again. It's not, you can't just write a number on a note and everybody's going to accept it, right? Like it's back to all of the things that you need to do to qualify. And so, you know, when you talk about like the value in our homes and why it's not going down as much, it's because people have equity, right? Like they've gained it, but they also bought into it in the beginning.
That's a critical point. Back in 08, 09, there was very little to any equity. Even if they got it 100%, sometimes they were doing HELOCs at north of 100%.
And those arms, right? Those 3 and 5 year arms, and then boom, man, those things came due, and that balloon payment hit, and that's when that gal and their, you know, that housekeeper that owned that $1 million property is like, oh my gosh! Like,
I didn't know that my rate was going to adjust.
Yeah, and they couldn't refi out of them, right? Because nothing was worth what it was supposed to be, and so it just like that was just snowballed. And an interesting thing to think about. For the folks listening, is that we've had something like 11 recessions since the mid-40s, and that's the only time where real estate values went down. Typically, they flatline or they increase just a little bit. So recession is not necessarily, because you're going to hear the R word a lot in the next coming months.
Yeah, 1 out of 11 times, we actually may have lost a little bit of out. We lost in that one opportunity, in that one occasion. But the rest of the times,
I'll go to Vegas with those odds.
Right? Yeah, all day long.
Yeah. So I think, you know, what we're all saying here, let me add one more thing. So yes, the amount of equity that people have in their homes now, they're not going to cut those loose. No. There's tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
no reason to.
What we're all trying to say here for the audience is we are not anywhere near where we were in 08, 09.
No,
even if we have a recession, historical data shows us that those recessions, yes, it's a little uncomfortable and maybe a little anxiety provoking, but it's not the end of the world. So if you are making decisions based upon that, or listening to other people that went through it that are discouraging you because they went through it, you need to talk to the professionals about this stuff. And that's what I try to counsel all my clients. And like, everybody in their dog is going to try to be helpful to you. Right? Oh, you know, I'm your dad, I'm your uncle, I'm your, you know, whatever, I'm your best bud, and I'm going to give you this advice. Oh no, this is terrible. You know, I'm not saying we know everything, but we can give you the facts. We will give you the facts. Yeah. And if you are not ready to buy or fiscally responsible, my daughter and her son-in-law actually probably got a little annoyed because I was trying to challenge their mindset, like really put some thought into this. If time got tough, what are you willing to do? You going to go get a roommate or a couple roommates? Like power through whatever it takes. Oh yeah. What if you lost a job? You know, fortunately they were in a position where they weren't, you know, over leveraging or anything like that. They were willing to do what it took to hold on to it until, because it is going to correct.
Well, in that conversation we had with them in the beginning, right? Like getting them ready that was like an 8-month process with them, right? Making sure that, you know, credit's where it needed to be and income's where it needed to be, and that they were ready to make those steps. It's just, and I think probably in both of our professions, that's why it's a little bit harder to come to us to ask, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you want to go to the experts, but if that expert's a salesperson, right? Like a salesperson,
right.
So you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's the thing. Like we have to, I think we have to work hard to change that mindset. And and the other thing that I think about a lot, and I'm starting to hear it, and it's resonating with the rest of the public right now, is that the majority of our buyers, those bigger generations that are coming, that are outpacing the boomers, right? They have never seen an interest rate above 3%.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're like, we're all going 6.5, bring it on, let's go. You know what I mean? It's time to buy.
Yeah.
But they've never seen that, right? So there's a lot of education that needs to take place. Mm-hmm. There is that data to back up and to help make them comfortable. We just have to be the people that bring it to them.
Yeah. Well, we touched on this in one of our podcasts before about, again, the same one about knowing if you got a good agent on, challenging the other side. If they're letting things just kind of go through too easy, they're not fighting hard enough for you. And actually, we talked about the fact if we as agents aren't and LOs pushing back on you as the client a little bit to really challenge you, we're not doing our job either. We're not trying to be difficult. We're just trying to really get your head wrapped around, what if it was a worst case scenario? What are, the different options and things like that? So you've at least thought of it. I think some people think of it a little bit. Some people probably just, move past it or whatever. But if we're doing our job right, we put the question out there and we've tried to get you to think about these things. And to your point, we're not just we're going to let you buy no matter what it takes. Yeah. We're not. Nobody in this room is going to let that happen.
No.
So.
No, work really hard. I work really hard at that to make sure, and I know you do as well. We've worked, together for a number of years now. And it's super, super important. I remember our first client?
Yeah. Did we talk about that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's just, it's still one of the most, amazing experiences I've had, but like it was work. Like it was work. It was
put us through the ringer. And that's why I have so much respect for you, is because I knew you were in it. And, if we're honest, it wasn't,
Yeah, it was a father and a mother and a son, and the son was, an only father, like an only parent, right? And they were renting. They were actually at the point that they were living on the couch of their accountant. And he was self-employed, and he hadn't so much as looked at a tax in I don't know.
Yeah, and we're like we're gonna take good care of this family. And anyway, that was. I'm glad that was our first, because it really showed, who we were on each side, and I think that's why we've got,
a lot of hand holding, a lot of research, a lot of work to get them there. But man, I still to this day, I'm not sure that I've had a more rewarding transaction at all. A lot
of emotional, I call it emotional currency. So if you hear that term, that's where that comes from. So I mean, that's awesome. When people got to be helped, they got to be helped. If they're getting into something that they shouldn't be getting themselves into, we're gonna say all that. Yep. And this all goes back to that relationship side of things. Yep. You really need to identify if you're just helping somebody accomplish a number, but by the end of the month, that's not a position you need to be in as a buyer or a seller. You really need to know that all the facts, as many as you can, put them out on the table, and let's make a good decision going forward, and then let's get to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's little bit of detail, kind of where we're at early 2023 in regards to rates, kind of what we think. Your little smirk on your face, kind of funny.
Yeah. It's like, I'll be honest with you, my business is like, with the increase in rates, maybe off 10%, right? Like people are still wanting to buy. The funny thing is, like I said, it's a matter of educating, right? Because they literally the majority of the buyers, they've never seen anything above a 3% or a 5% or 4%, and so this is just like, oh my gosh, this is so high. And they are battling the prices a little bit, right? The things are still high, materials are still high. And so that has slowed the building down, and it's slowed the buying down, and everybody's kind of waiting to see, like, oh no, they've got their 08 goggles on, and so you have to explain the differences. So ultimately, inflation's peaked. We got that announcement from the Fed. They finally admitted it. It's been, for the rest of us know.
So
it's been for a minute.
So for the audience, right, it's artificially inflated interest to tame the inflation.
Yeah, correct. Right. So the on its most basic form, the Fed itself, it raises, when they say they're raising rates, they're raising the Fed funds rate. The Fed's funds rate is the rate that banks pay to borrow money from the Fed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a direct mapping.
No, there's
to
a
the mortgage
relationship.
rate, but there is a relationship.
There's a relationship. Yeah, the direct relationship is consumer debt, credit cards, and HELOCs and stuff like that. You know, that's why HELOC rates are so high right now. And so you do see that direct correlation. Now, mortgage-backed securities are traded on the stock market, and they're basically it's an emotional thing, right? It's just like any other stock. So the Fed raises the rate, and then they come out and speak, and the market kind of, you know, they watch what they do, and then they listen to what they say, and then they decide, you know, how they're going to react to that. And so that is mortgage bonds. And so what we've been waiting for is for them to raise it high enough that the market, which is you and I and everybody that buys and sells, waiting for us to believe that they have finally got a handle on inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And so once that happened, we started to see interest rates get better. Mm-hmm. Last week we had an anomaly that the European, the Japanese, basically equivalent of our Fed, new director, different direction, threw a little grenade in our 1 point betterment in interest rates, and now we're back up in the sixes again, right? So we have a lot of volatility to get through. Everybody and their dog is going to tell you that rates are going to trend down throughout this year. You know, I've heard people say mid to low fives by the end of the first quarter. Fannie Mae itself came out and said mid fours by the end of the year. So everything's going to trend down. Historically, you know, if you want to do the research, interest rates follow inflation. So inflation goes up, interest rates go up. Inflation comes down, interest rates come down. It's some very basic things that the buyers can go and look at.
Yeah, so map out what we just talked about. We've talked a pretty good length about inventory not going to meet requirements.
Correct.
We've talked about right now there's uncertainty in the market for sellers.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know how much it's going to normalize, makes them receptive to our offers and asking for sellers' concessions for you as buyers because you need them. Then we talk about the fact that interest rates are a high degree of likelihood to come down because they were artificially overinflated anyway for a reason. That reason is now going away.
And I've heard some experts, you know, actually say that they overinflated that Fed funds rate in order to affect real estate directly because they know how much that drives the economy, right?
Massive
they needed that to slow down.
Impact.
Yeah.
So you take all of that and rates go down, so you can get into a good situation with a seller because they're willing to help you. The rates are coming down, so by the time you begin to close, or even if it's a while later and you want to refi or whatever, I'm just saying there could be a massive opportunity to buy.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like so for our folks, especially our locals, right, or the people who have been living in a hotel, like there's still some of that going on because the inventory was so low and prices got so high. There's a in that economic summit I went to, there's a lot of factors that they touched on. And all of those things lead up to we don't have enough inventory and interest rates are coming down, right? So when you talk about, like, I'm still a little on the fence. I'm going to be honest. When you talk about normalizing market, I'm not sure we're going to get there. Like, I mean, we're in a period now. Mm-hmm. Part of me thinks maybe this period's short, and I don't want people to, go, there's opinion to everything. Mm-hmm. I look at a lot of statistics and information. So you add this up, right? We're short 17,000 homes over the next 10 years in Ada County alone. Builders have slowed over the last few months, right?
Because they're scared of a repeat of 0809.
Right. They don't want to be stuck with a bunch of inventory, right? So now you kind of look
Guess how they're getting rid of inventory? Massive promotions.
Yeah, like
good for the
$10,000, $20,000 seller credits. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so those are all good things, right? But so once interest rates start to come down, are we going to see that same compounding we saw leading up to this, right? The gentleman who I respect greatly, is a national economist for another real estate firm. I respect him greatly. I disagree with him a little bit because he said that the demand would slow here locally, and quite honestly, the one item he didn't touch on is the great political migration. That's my own term, by the way.
Yeah.
I
like that.
Political refugees.
And I'm not touching on anybody's politics or whatever, but it's a reality, right?
Yep, 100%.
California, Oregon, Washington, they want out of what they're
It's
experiencing.
not getting any better.
And Texas, Arizona, and Idaho have what they're not getting.
Yep.
Right. And if you think that the changes that are going on now are going to slow those people wanting to leave, I think they're crazy.
They're just superheating it.
Right.
All those things are compounding, and it's
exactly
becoming
right.
more and more issues to leave.
And so to your point, Jared, we have a window now where there's just a ton of opportunity for people that didn't buy, that didn't sell, first-time home buyers, all of that. And I'm not so sure how long that window is going to be open.
Yeah, I don't want it to get back to the chaotic mode that we had the last couple of years, but it could very easily.
I think it's fairly ripe for it.
Supply goes down and this demand, because I guarantee you they're still coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, I've got a whole list of people I knew from back in the guide business days, and they're trying to get here.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah,
And it's
just waiting for the right
reason.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So when they start seeing inventory pick up in the spring, rates going down, they're like, "Yep, it's time. Let's do it."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so what does that look like? And you still have the fence sitters, right? The move up, move down buyers that didn't do anything.
Right.
And now, like, unless they get the right price and rate, they're not going to, because they're in a 2 or a 3, right? So, and then if they do those homes stay as investment properties because they're in a 2 or 3% interest rate? Do those homes for the next 20 years? Do we even see those homes on the market again as part of the inventory? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's a bunch of factors that are just like, you really got to pick. Yeah, you really got to pick it apart, right? Like, right. If I'm in a 2 or 3, I access equity for a down payment, and I keep that home as investment property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, there's one other thing I wanted to touch on, and that is that's recent for me, and I've seen it happen way too often, and that is this hesitation to get in front of a lender.
Yeah.
I get it, right? There's a lot of personal information. Mm-hmm. It's sensitive. You're like, ooh, what am I going to find? Am I ready? Am I not ready? I mean, all the things that goes through a buyer's mind. But I just literally had a client looking, and they didn't say perfect, but pretty darn near perfect place for them. They weren't ready.
Mm. It's too late, right?
It's too late. It's gone. It's pending.
Oh.
Yeah, and I see that all too often. And I'm never in a hurry to put somebody into a place, but I know for a fact that these folks were ready. They had some extenuating circumstances that this property was pretty unique for. And even through encouragement, it's like, people think sometimes we tell them to get in front of a lender just to accelerate things. It's not. It's to get a sanity check. Where are we at? Are you ready?
The reality check.
The sanity and reality check of where we're at. And sometimes people are pleased to find out where they're at. And they're like, oh, great, perfect. I can go at the market with confidence. And other times you're like, that reality check is you got work to do.
That's probably the one thing I felt like where I was dealing with properties up north is, even though when things got nuts, the thing that I think did kind of help was telling them, hey, let's get everything in a row. Let's get all our stuff done on the front side. So then we can go and look. We know exactly what the game plan is. Yep. We know what's in our world, what we're going to look at. And I kind of liked it because rather than going and spending time on things that wasn't reality or they didn't know was reality, it allowed us to know what our game plan was. What are we going to come with? We're coming to the table with a sense of what we know we can do. Yeah. And it gave them kind of, it made them relax a little bit, gave them confidence. Because they already had taken the time.
Yeah. Well, the opposite of that is that you don't know. You begin to make all these decisions. You find a place, and now you're starting to emotionally invest in, making this change. I can fix all these problems, these things I needed to do, and then when you realize that you either lost the house because you moved too slow, or you weren't even close to ready, and boom, it falls apart. Like, that's discouraging.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
I like to think of our two jobs as the opposite sides of the brain, right? And so, like, the more statistical and analytical, whether it's the husband or wife or right or left side of the brain or whatever that situation is, buying a home starts out as a financial decision, right? We want our own place. We keep throwing away rent. We want to be able to put, dogs there and put our own and gain equity and do all of these things, right? And then once you look at a house, it becomes emotional really quick, right? Oh, I got to have this. I got to have that. Right? And so it's frustrating when those people get out shopping before they know, right? Because then you have to tell them you can't buy what your heart wants. They're already
emotional, and now that went in the wrong direction.
Yeah. So it's like you guys are I don't want your job, to be quite honest with you, managing that emotional side, because it's awesome to watch. But it's so important to get in front of a lender first to, make sure you can manage what your expectations will be. And it's not a letdown, right? You get what you can afford.
Yeah.
And this is our first step.
Yeah. You got to know what kind of players you have to know the offense you're going to run
to
win the game.
Right. Yep, exactly right.
Yeah, well, just so the audience knows, we do have a graphic, a roadmap of what the buying process looks like, and just reach out to us. We'd be glad to send it to you. It's just a real straightforward one-page graphic that shows you what to think about in the process. It interestingly does show, get in touch with an agent, which, I appreciate, but if we're all honest, back to what we were just talking about, it's really the lender that they need to be talking to first. Now, what we can do is introduce you to a good lender that has the same heart that we do. So, maybe that's in the right sequence. I don't know, but a very close second is going to be talk to the lender, see where we're at, do that reality check, and then make a decision going forward. Because a lot of people are like, well, what do you think we should do? What about that? I'm like, I don't have enough information to really help you. Like, oh, I really like that house. I'm like, well, what loan type do you qualify for? Well, we don't know. Well, that doesn't qualify for an FHA or a VA.
Yeah, ultimately,
what does that mean?
Yeah, ultimately, you guys don't even have a clue of how to make the offer,
right?
Unless you know what they qualify for, right? What type of loan, what rate looks like, what they can afford as a payment. Yeah, it's definitely a team business, right? We all got to be on the same page for that to work.
Yeah. So I think we've gone pretty long. We try to keep it, condensed about 20-25. But when guests like yourself,
it's been good.
Yeah, this is great stuff. For those of you that stuck around, we really appreciate making it all the way through. Is there anything else you
No, I mean, just pleasure meeting you. Great, well, just learning more about your story and what you do, and I really love just your approach, how you come across with it, because that's the biggest thing is I love people.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do things that are best for them. Number one, and because it's not about me.
Right.
Yeah, and to know that the other players within our team are doing the same.
That's the same thing.
That's a big relief. So
well, I can't say enough. I appreciate you guys having me on. DR, I'm still waiting for you to break out in some Don Williams, man, with that voice. Holy crap.
I know. He did a little beef. It's what's for dinner the other night. He slid it in there. And I'm like, good for you, man, because he does. He's got.
I have too much fun on these mics.
yeah. Coming here today, playing his little guitar.
Fantastic.
Anyway, very good stuff. Reach out to us if you want to, have a personal chat with Chase, and he'll shoot it to you straight and tell you exactly where you're at. Take really good care of you. So with that, I wish you a blessed day.
Hey, and wherever you're at, make the most of it and be in the moment.
Take care.